Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Could you please turn your cell phones to vibrate or mute or something so that we don't have this interrupted by those distracting noises. Thank you for coming here this evening and welcome. My name is John Gilmore on behalf of Minnesota Conservatives. Welcome to possibly the only, but certainly the first Republican National Committee debate for those individuals running for committee man and committee woman from the state of Minnesota. For those of you who may not know, they'll be elected on April 16th, the state central committee meeting in the Twin Cities. I'd like to thank Pat Igo for helping me get these facilities, and I'd like to thank Dan and Chris O'Gara for their generosity in offering us these quarters. I'd also like to thank Lisa Bellock, who's front and center, and is going to be our timekeeper for this evening's debate.
And John, we would like to thank you.
Thank you. I, in turn, would like to thank the Uptake, who has agreed to cover this live on the internets. And people can tune in live now, or it will be on their website later. And if you are not in the Twin Cities, you can go to www.theuptake.org, either tonight in real time or later in the week, where it'll be basically video on demand. Also, the candidates, if they feel so inclined, are invited to go to the right here, not the Uptake's usual position, and have an interview, but that's purely optional. Thank you. For those of you watching on the internet, you can send an email question to minnesotaconservatives@gmail.com. Minnesota is spelled out. minnesotaconservatives@gmail.com. I'll be monitoring that on my BlackBerry. Also, if you're on Twitter, the hashtag is RPM11, Robert Peter Mary 11, and I'll be trying to monitor those as well. I will need to know your name. There will be no anonymous questions this evening. As a final matter, I need to say that everyone who is running for the RNC was invited. The people before you are the ones who showed up. But to a person, everyone was invited. If you've heard to the contrary, that's simply not the case, and I'd like there to be no doubt about the welcome. The rules of the debate are as follows. Each individual will have a 3-minute opening statement. As time allows, they may have a 1 to 2 minute closing. I'm of the belief that over-moderated debates tend to be boring, so I'm going to try to be less seen and involved and let these individuals try to convince you and others why you should support them for committee man and committee woman. Questions from the floor, there's a microphone here. You have 1 minute to ask a question. You will be cut off after 1 minute. You may ask all the people on stage, the men candidates, or the women candidates, or one individual person. If you ask one individual person, only that individual will respond and we'll move on to another question. There is something called a wild card. At any given point in this evening's proceedings, each of the candidates can simply raise their hand and they can call on another individual and ask that candidate a question. Again, 1 minute for their question, 2 minutes for the response. There are 2 locations back by the bar where Pat Igo is holding contribution containers. If you drop $1 in, that would be great. I'm shouldering the cost of this, which is minimal given the generosity of O'Gara's. I'm simply paying Jim, our sound and light man, and of course he deserves that. Are there any questions about the format from the audience? Okay, none. Then at this time, I would like to ask Jim, are you here? No, Paul. Sorry, all these Carlsons and Carsons, it's Minnesota. Paul, can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to lead with the committee men in reverse alphabetical order for their opening 3-minute statement.
I guess that's me. Took me a minute to figure that out. Well, I'm Jeff Johnson, and I'm running for National Committee Man. Thank you. I want to thank you all for being here, and for those who are watching, and I want to thank John for putting this together and anyone who helped him with that. I'm running for committee man because I really believe we have an opportunity to remake this position, to redefine this position into much more of an activist party-building role than what it has been in the past. At least that's what I would do with it. And I have a lot of ideas and a lot of specifics, and I only have about 2.5 minutes left, so I'm going to throw 3 of them out at you really quickly. Number 1 is money. And keep in mind that the committee man and the committee woman really serve 2 roles. One, we serve at the federal level on the RNC, and also at the state level on the state executive committee. For me, money will be priority number 1 at the federal level. As I've told many of you in the past, the RNC essentially stiffed Minnesota last year. We got ignored by the RNC last year. We cannot allow that to happen again. And money, by the way, is not the end-all, be-all of our elections. If we run a poor campaign, all the money in the world won't matter. But if we have smart campaigns and good candidates and a good plan and a good message and money, it's going to be very hard to beat Republicans in 2012. So that will be priority number 1 for me. At the state level, outside of that federal level, a couple things that really come to mind as priorities for me. Number 1, I don't believe we do a good enough job in helping BPOUs recruit and support conservatives for local offices like school board, like city council, like county commissioner. I happen to be a county commissioner in Hennepin County. The Democrats have been doing this for years, and I cannot think of a better way to build our party for the long term than by getting a lot more of us into those local positions. And so that would be something that I would kind of take a hold of at the state level and really try to lead. Also at the state level, message is so important. Our brand is so important. And I believe that we do well, we do best when we have a very strong, clear, positive conservative message. And I happen to believe you can be positive and conservative and free market based and constitutional all at the same time. And I would love to help craft and share that message with the people of Minnesota. Again, I just believe we've got a great opportunity in 2012 and actually next month to change this position into something much more active and positive. I would love to play that role for you, and I would love to earn your support as your National Committee man. Thank you very much.
Is this mic on? My name is Phil Herwig, and I'm running for the National Committeeman spot as well. I get my... Whoops. I have to give you some visuals. Basically, it's not about the money, it's about winning elections. And the way I look at it, you know, I come from a BPOU, and at some of the conventions that I've been at, I outlined what the history was. We only had, it was blue in the House and blue in the Senate. And after the '88 election, the chair of my BPOU, I was vice chair, we thought we've got to do something about this. We have good conservative Republican candidates, but they cannot win. And then I remind people that think about the story of David meeting Goliath. I asked the people in the audience, how many rocks did David have when he met Goliath? Well, we thought about that when we developed our strategy for turning our district, it's about 20 years ago, from a blue district into a red district. And that's House and Senate. So I showed at the conventions, the CD conventions, this was the letter to the editor campaign that went on before '89. Starting right after the '88 election, we started a little letter at the editor campaign. And this is only one of the panels. There's about 3 panels, actually 2.5 panels like this. And what happened? We picked up the conservative rocks in our district. The pro-life rock, the pro-Second Amendment right rock, the reduction of taxes rock, the smaller government rock, and maybe now we could pick up the improvement of the job market rock. And we use these in letters to the editor. And you know, you think about the money. These elections, we don't get our message out in between one general election and the other. We only get it out basically between the endorsing convention with our endorsed candidate and the general election. The rest of the time, between two general elections, we have zero presence in the districts. This is taking care of that, and if we do this, you know, the RNC is going to look, they're going to poll, they're going to find out what kind of a response the Republican candidates may get. This is laying the groundwork for the RNC polling, and when they find out what kind of a base we have built in a time period between general elections when we do nothing, we won't get, the time over? The $30,000 they gave us last time, we'll be going back to the $8 million that they gave us before, and we will take these seats back. This is a red state.
Tom, the opening comments are for 3 minutes, and Lisa will give you a 1-minute hand signal and a 30-second hand signal. She's in the front row there.
And then a bell, right? Hello. Thanks. My name's Tom Emmer, and I'm also seeking the position of Republican National Committee man. My apologies for coming in late. I actually did not expect to be here tonight, and hopefully I thought it was very important for you folks that have taken the time to be here that I find a way to show up. We just got done with K-Talk evaluating the President's speech on a new webcast. Wow. You should see that. We still don't know why we're in Libya and what it is we seek to accomplish, but that'll be another topic for another day. And then I've got a meeting yet tonight in Minneapolis with another group of Republicans, so hopefully we can do some good work before I have to go. I'll make it very quick. This is going to be a short 1-year position. Brian Sullivan has resigned and essentially left 1 year on this term for the position of Republican National Committee man. That's why it can't take any time to learn the position. We can't afford to waste time. I've been going around giving a speech that some of you have heard because of the great honor that you bestowed on myself to be our voice over the last year and a half. I now have people like Chris Christie in my cell phone, and Mitt Romney, and Newt Gingrich, and yes, we've met people like Sarah Palin, and the list goes on. And it's not whether we agree with all these people and everything they say, but they are the national spokespeople for our party, and some of you have heard me say this. It's important to have those relationships, it's important to grow those relationships, and it will be important to leverage those relationships to make sure that Minnesota does get the national resources that we will need to be successful. We have a U.S. Senate race to win in 2012, and this position is going to be very important to make sure that those resources come back. How many people know that in the 2008 presidential election here in Minnesota, we sent over $10 million out to the national party? Does anybody know how much we got back? A little over $4 million. All right? That has to change. And it's not just the national resources, as I have emphasized to everybody during my travels. It's the state resources as well, and then it's working together to enhance the grassroots network that you and I, that we all built over the last 2 years to make sure that grassroots network is alive and well funded to protect the good Republicans we've elected and to make sure that we elect new Republicans the state over. And that it is about delivering our message of smaller government, individual liberty, and economic freedom. And I'm going to tell this story again because I love telling it. Talking to a high school class and telling them about capitalism and why it's great, and telling them that people that are trying to sell you this fairness thing are all about wealth redistribution, and that's not your future. And then you've heard me tell this story. As I was leaving, the young lady who organized this high school event came up to me and said, "Thank you for coming, Mr. Emmer. We loved your message." And then she smiled and said, "And besides, our teachers were freaking out." We need to keep doing that, folks. I hope that this is a good event and that we all get some exposure so you know what it is we offer to this position, because it's going to be very important to the success of our candidates in 2012. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. And in reverse alphabetical order, the women candidates, and you can speak from the table or have the podium at your discretion.
Hi, I'm Pamela Punt, and I'm running for National Committee Woman, obviously. Thank you so much to the Minnesota Conservatives for hosting this great event tonight, John Gilmore and all involved for making this happen. I really appreciate this opportunity. You know, this is a very exciting time to be a Republican in the state of Minnesota. We have such great momentum here with our new majorities in the Senate and the House, big victories with our congressional seats in Minnesota. Nationally, our ideas are winning. We are the party of ideas, the Republican Party. And in the 2010 cycle, we gained 63 seats in the House, and the majority in the House of Representatives at a national level, as well as 11 governorships. And now with 2012 upon us, we have the potential for 2 people from Minnesota to be running for president. This is clearly our time. So think about this. Back in 1968, the DFL in Minnesota had 2 presidential candidates, in Humphrey and McCarthy. And it was a fight for control of the DFL party between these 2 men, one a senator and one the vice president to the resigning Johnson. And since that time, this battle has prompted the DFL to have a hold on our state, a hold on presidential and other politics in Minnesota. Even with Humphrey's defeat by Nixon in that 1968 election, it made a considerable mark here. And it was a time that energized the DFL party and brought people to the table for many different reasons. And for 40 years, this has been their cause. And I'm here to tell you tonight that the time has elapsed for the DFL. And this is our time. The Republican Party is the party of ideas. It's the party of the people. It is, in truth, the majority party. Our problem has been to inform people of the truth and to tell them what our party stands for. We need a new advocacy, a new discipline, hard work to bring people to us, to show people they are with us. We need allies. We need new energy. We need to identify where the opportunities are and take those opportunities with no holds barred. We are 590 days out from Election Day in 2012, and you've got to remember, this is our time. I am inspired to do this work by you, the grassroots activists of this party, and I will bring national attention and resources to Minnesota to win elections, and together we will take this state back. The Republican Party is the party of Minnesota, and will be the party of Minnesota for the next 40 years and beyond. I'm Pamela Punt, and I'm running for National Committee Woman. Thank you.
How did we decide?
Alphabetical.
Oh, alphabetical.
No, reverse.
Reverse alphabetical. Reverse alphabetical. Went to a Catholic school. Sorry. Anyway, I'm Mary Igo, and I'm running for National Committee Woman. And I usually start out with 2 things that I know Republicans like to hear. One is that Obama's a one-term president, and the second is that Klobuchar is going down. And so I can't do anything but start that out this way, since I have some people on the right over here that probably aren't comfortable with that, but that's okay. Anyway, a couple of things. I know that the issue of the Republican National Committee comes up as a fundraiser. The real purpose of the party is threefold. One, to set policy and the rules. One is to educate people and share some of the education. They've been very involved in getting the senators' wives and the congressmen's wives involved in some education opportunities and trying to help encourage women. The third is fundraising. So when it comes to the first two, that's what I do every day in my business. I run a business, a little over $100 million business, and I know that unless we have the purpose and we know where we're going, we might end up somewhere else. And because I work for physicians in healthcare, I definitely know I might end up somewhere else if I'm not able to articulate where we need to go. The chairman of the party changes over every couple of years, and that's even more important to maintain a common goal and a common focus. As far as education goes, you know, we won the House and the Senate in the state of Minnesota. We did that not because of the party, not because of an individual. It's because of the grassroots people. My role in the grassroots is really training and educating women. I was fortunate enough to be given the opportunity in 2006 to pick up what was flailing of the Minnesota Excellence in Public Service Series program. I founded the Minnesota chapter. It is one of 23 states that have this program, and its purpose is really to help identify for women how the political process works, how the party process works, so that they feel more confident in stepping forward running for office. This last election, we had 8 people that were elected to that office. These are people that have come through the program in the last 3 years. The first class was in 2006. And we have 8 that won office or were reelected. We have 3 that were campaign managers for successful campaigns, one of those being Chip Krivek's campaign. And we have 2 more that were appointed to, the governor appointed them to committees, and they are commissioners. And we have 6, I've been corrected, we have 6 that went together to form a PAC, and that is the Voices PAC, and I think Jennifer's here and Pam's part of that. Pam was part of the class that went together to set up the PAC that's purely dedicated to raising funds for women. Is that a minute or 30 seconds? What? Oh, okay. So anyway, I'm Mary Igo. I've done some of those things, and I do have relationships in the RNC. I can hit the ground running, and I also feel the party needs some opening up. So there, thank you.
Good evening. I'm Janet Byhofer, and thank you all for coming. Thank you, John, for hosting this, and thank you those on the internet and those of you who will read it later on the internet or view it later. I'm this hat lady that many of the activists across the states have worked with over the years. I have communicated with you in person, when training, and electronically. But tonight, we are here to help you decide who you want to represent you at the RNC. We have a great set of candidates, but I want you to pay special attention to the vision each of these people bring to this role. Some will tell you maybe it's a new face. My vision is that we need someone who has the head to do strategic planning. Been there, done that. Who has a passionate heart on conservative values. What drove me into volunteering for the Republican Party was a gut-level fear in the Bush second presidential race that we were losing control. Scared me to death, and nothing has changed. We have to stop that train going over the cliff. And the third reason is hands to either lead projects or do them. And many of you who have worked with me know that I've done both of those. Some will say we need communication. And again, those of you who have worked with me over the years know that you get communication directly. I take feedback. The information goes up and down the line. So it's there. The communication can be done. I will take your ideas and spread them where they need to go. Grassroots, we've heard this is a policy position. I've read the rules. I don't see policy in there, and I've got them with me tonight. Grassroots make policy for the party, starting with the precinct caucuses on up in our programs. We are a grassroots organization. And the third thing you will hear from all of us is we desperately need money in this state. But there's nothing magical about an RNC title that will suddenly bring money into Minnesota. And what I learned when I worked with IBM, that in order to get those executives to sign those $1, $5, and $13 million checks, is not necessarily contacts or influence, but the ability to persuade people that we are valued and we have something to offer the RNC and they can offer something to us. And it is a persuasion deal. We want them to spend money in Minnesota. I have as a vision to use my track record of hard work to serve you. We will get more later on. I think I've gotten the high sign.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay. The bottom line is the RNC has to focus on winning elections, and we need to help them do that. And we need a messenger who can communicate up and down, because the world changed in 2006, elections changed in 2006, and what worked prior to that is not going to work. I get it. I get it in my core. So thank you for listening. Please watch what people say is a vision, because together we can make a difference in this state. Thank you very much.
Sorry. I'm Pat Anderson. I also want to thank everyone for attending and for John for hosting this. I hope you've all put your dollar in the bucket in the back to help them out with costs. And thanks to the uptake. The uptake isn't always so bad. So there you go. But yeah, that's all you get from me. So. But I want to just start out. We've been running around doing congressional district conventions. I think I want to start first and say I agree with Janet. This is clearly not a policy-making position. It's very different. This is a position about connecting both the national party and the candidates here on the ground, and the national party and the activists here in Minnesota. That's what this is about. It's about bringing resources from the national folks here. We've heard all about the money. It's pathetic what happened to us last year, and we cannot allow that to happen again. We've got to be able to make the case and to get the dollars here. But also here in Minnesota, you have to be able to help to raise money. You know, I've raised probably well over $1 million in my career, and I'm not talking about through fundraisers. I've done it myself, making calls, and I'm heavily connected to the donor community. And I can tell you they're excited that I'm running for this position. They think it's a positive thing for the party. But you have to be able to connect and help the candidates, our future candidates, and our current candidates. And it's not just about the federal races, folks. It's also about our legislature. Because the Democrats are going to be after those legislative seats next year. 2012 is going to be brutal. Brutal on our candidates. They're not going to let what happened last year. They're going to try to stop us because they want that legislature back, especially in the Senate. You should see their faces. I'm down there working on pension reform, and there are a lot of very upset and depressed Democrats, and we're going to make sure that that's the way it stays. But we got a Senate race. We got to make sure that Minnesota goes Republican in the presidential race. There's a chance that we might have a Minnesota candidate on the ballot. We have two great candidates who have semi-announced that they're running for president, and there's a chance that one of those is going to be our candidate. And we've got to be here to help, and we've got to be able to convince other national folks that we can win. I've spent 20 years in this party as an activist, as a precinct captain, as a BPOU leader, as a statewide elected official, and as a candidate. I have a wealth of experience. I have a wealth of knowledge about campaigns and how to win campaigns and how campaigns are lost. And I want to bring those resources and that knowledge to help our future candidates, because this is a battle we have to win, and we got to win it in 2012. And I want to be there on the front lines working with you to get things done. Thank you. Thanks.
And now for the interesting part of the debate. Questions. 1 minute question from the floor. If I get any through Twitter or Gmail, I'll announce them from the podium. It might be easier, ladies and gentlemen, if you respond from the table rather than getting up at this point, just for efficiency's sake. And anyone who has a question can just line up at the microphone there, please. If you would state your name, whether you're a delegate or an alternate, and your BPOU. Remember, you can ask an individual, one of the 7 now, or all the men, or just the women, or you can ask each candidate to respond. The people for whom this debate exists is you, so you have those choices. Go ahead, sir.
My name is Max Sullivan. I'm either a delegate or an alternate. I don't know which. I will be there. But my question is, which of you agree with me that we need Michelle Bachmann running for the Senate, not for the presidency?
Is that to everyone, sir? Then you know what? Anyone can jump in.
I'll just start out. This is one thing I feel passionately about. I think the role of national committee man and woman is to not get involved in these races, frankly. I think you have to be fair to every single candidate, from ones that we maybe don't like to ones we love, right? We have to be very fair, and I think that's what people look for in their party leadership. And so I'm not going to have an opinion about that, even though I have a very strong opinion about we desperately need a candidate who can win, and I think she can win. But I really think it's important that we stay out of these things. So.
Yeah, I would just jump in and say that, that's really up to Michelle Bachmann and what office that she chooses to seek. And certainly she's a great candidate and has a very strong message. And a lot of us follow her very, very closely. And I think we'd be happy to have her running in whatever capacity she chooses to run. If she chooses to run for her existing seat, that would be a great place for her as well.
I would also like to add that we are a grassroots organization that go through an endorsement process. And the RNC is not top-down. It is bottom-up. Grassroots, feed it, and go up. So I would also agree, as much as we love Michelle Bachmann, she decides where she's going to run, and the grassroots decide whom they are going to endorse. And our job is to back that endorsed candidate with everything we've got. I will say she will bring an incredible amount of life to any campaign.
And I'll be a little bit more direct. I think she'd make a great candidate against Amy Klobuchar. But I also agree with the fact that we really can't make that judgment at this point. Whole lot of steps to go through before that happens.
Gentlemen?
I'd just like to say that I think Michelle Bachmann's focus has been on the federal level, although she would be an exceedingly good candidate for the Senate. Myself, I've been kind of on my own trying to encourage Barb Davis-White to consider the Senate race. She's charismatic. She's very good as being a conservative. And I guess you would really know of her and the credentials she would bring and the spirit that she would bring to a campaign facing off against Amy Klobuchar.
I guess all I would say, other than ditto to most of what everyone else has said, is that I'm hopeful that we're going to have more than one strong candidate for the Senate, and we got to get on that soon. So I would encourage all you to get out there and start encouraging some of our strong people to consider this, because by this summer we need a candidate or two out there. We can beat Amy Klobuchar, but we can't wait until next year to get started on that.
There isn't much to add, Max. I agree that this position shouldn't be about taking that position, especially at this point. But I would say this. If Michelle Bachmann were the candidate, anybody up here and anybody out there, this job would be a lot easier. She would be raising a lot of money. She's a political ATM.
My name is Andrew Wagner. I'm here on behalf of the College Republicans. I believe we have a delegate spot on State Central, but oftentimes the CRs are pretty underutilized and their focus isn't necessarily on races where they can make the greatest impact. I was just wondering what your plan is with the RNC to coordinate on a state level with the College Republicans and, more importantly, with younger voters in general.
I think the younger voters getting involved in the party are outstanding. I think the most that we
Excuse me, Mary, I'm getting a text that it's difficult for people in the back to hear the women, so if you could just speak up.
Maybe is this on?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now? Okay. The college Republicans, I agree, have been underutilized. I think it's been difficult to engage them and difficult for us to figure out how to get them involved. And it's equally as difficult, I think, for you as college Republicans, wherever you went, to find a way to get involved. And we need to fix that. There are so many opportunities. There you are. There are so many opportunities for your group to get involved, to run for party offices, and to be at the conventions engaging. I couldn't say enough about it.
Andrew, we worked together at the party last summer. I had a unique experience last year with the election ops and covered a number of Republican college campuses. I'm telling you, we have a resource that is just absolutely dynamite. These kids are fantastic. So I will promise you, and I will be held to this, that should I get elected as Republican National Committee woman, we will put a plan in place, because we need the youth so badly, and we have a pool of talent in these young kids that is just absolutely terrific. So that's it. We can make this happen.
There's a real opportunity that we need to take a hold of in terms of recruiting people on campuses, and young women especially. I've attended and been involved in some of the White House Project events. It's a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization that trains women to run for office. And I can tell you, I've been at their Go Run training, and where they go to find people is college campuses with these young women that have been recruited by the liberal side and told that they should be community activists, that they should get involved, that, oh, this is what we believe in, don't you believe in this? And they're convinced at a very, very young age on college campuses that they are part of what these liberal ladies believe in. And they're beating us at this. There's another organization that just started in the past year called No Labels. It is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization as well, and they are doing the same thing. They had a conference a couple of months ago in New York, and I can tell you most of the young women that were there were recruited in the same way, and they're heavily, heavily skewed to liberal beliefs, because those are the people that are recruiting them. So this is our charge. We need to go out, we need to get on those campuses, and we need to have these conversations with these young women before they get engaged with these groups that then pretty much convince them that they believe the same that the liberal ladies are believing, and when truly these young women, you know, come from families and backgrounds and have values that align with our platform.
Thank you. I agree. The legislative candidate, one of them that was at the University of Minnesota, he actually door knocked. He told me this. He door knocked several of the dorms, and the ones that he door knocked, because they're broken out by precinct, he actually took like 45%. And so it can be won, and this is the time to do it. I was a college Republican, it was a while ago, but at the U too, and we had almost no connection at that time with the state party. So I understand the incredible frustration. But that it is a time when people are, you know, between 18 and 22 years old, that they're forming their political beliefs. So we have to grab folks, especially now. We have such an incredible opportunity because of the debt issues and the economic issues. It just hits people. They get it at that age. And I think that we're winning those folks, but we got to have a concerted effort at the campuses to make our point and stop just giving them up to the liberals. Thanks.
And if I can just follow up, Pat, you and I were college Republicans at about the same time, I think, and I'm actually amazed. I ran for Attorney General 4 years ago. I was amazed at how active the college Republicans were and how much they did for us. When I was a college Republican, we mostly drank beer and didn't do much else. And so it's thank you.
Same thing with me, Jeff.
But it's so nice. We have such a great resource here, and there are a lot of things we can do. One small piece, I think that we can do a better job as a committee man or committee woman in sharing information with college students and with young people, make sure they understand what's going on, make sure they know what opportunities are out there to help, as well as, you know, how they can actually get involved, because I think some of them know that, but many of them don't. We just have to reach out better, I think.
I think I'm a little younger than you and Pat, so. All right, maybe not a little, maybe a lot. Andrew, I will tell you that I think we did take advantage of the current CRs and former CRs in our campaign last summer and last fall. You guys were great, and we'll be forever in your debt. Parades, organizational stuff, phone calls, and it goes on and on. I think this position, and I've said this when I go around to these conventions, I don't know how many people realize that this 50-year-old white, and it did sound better a month ago when it was this 49-year-old, this 50, see, and I am younger, aren't I? All right, never mind. Not even close, that's right. Where was I going? Andrew, I don't know how many people realize in this room that this 50-year-old white-haired Republican led all other candidates last fall in the age group 18 to 35. I mean, that's because of the message. That's because of our message, and the key is communication and making sure we reach everybody where they are, and that means college campuses. I had one candidate when we went to St. Olaf last fall tell me, I never come here because it's not a very friendly place. And by the way, Pamela, I've got a daughter by the name of Katie. It starts at home. She's going to be a really good Republican. Starts at home.
I never was a college Republican. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally. I've been here for about 40 years now. But we didn't have a college Republican organization on campus. We had Democrats. And in fact, in my town, they even have a party that's called the Liberal Party, and hardly any Republicans. So I think my experience with them has absolutely made me a conservative Republican. But you know, I heard here that we got to get them more involved. Well, the fact that they are in the college Republicans already tells me that they are involved. And the job of the NRC chairman or chairwoman is to build relationships with them, just as our job is to build relationships with the congressional districts and the BPOUs. And it's that building that unified net of relationships is what is going to turn this state into what it already under the surface is, a red state.
Thank you. Georgia?
My name is Georgia Dietz. I'm a state central delegate from 64B. I know a lot of people think the RNC is this kind of nebulous group, and if something happens in Washington and they're not really sure what happens. I'm wondering how, if each of you are elected to this position, how you will let the people of Minnesota know what you are doing, what's going on, how you will impart that to us. And I know that there are reports to state exec meetings, but how will you let the grassroots know what's happening? Thank you.
Thank you. Why don't we start with Janet and then alternate Tom? Just go boy, girl, because that's what we do for excitement.
Girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. There's 4 of us and 3 of them. Okay. Georgia, it's really good. One of the things that I would like to re-emphasize, I spent my political career communicating with people, and it started in the 2nd District. When we had any kind of meeting from the full committee or the state executive committee, within 24 hours of that meeting, I sent out a one-screen recap of what had happened at that meeting, what the ideas were, and who to contact. That went to legislators, activists, full committee, etc. That did more to unify the district than almost anything that we had ever done. And I got feedback from all levels, the committee, etc., the activists. They knew what was going on. Then when the election operations program hit the ground last year, we set up a communication vehicle to communicate to everyone who signed up to be an election judge, a poll challenger, or an attorney. I've been there and I've done it. And what needs to be done, and I believe this, for the RNC, first of all, there's 2 major meetings a year, maybe 3. It's not an ongoing major meeting deal, but the same thing. What's done at the state executive committee, just as I did it as chairman of the 2nd District, that can go out to the activists. That kind of email can be done. And there's also the way that you could put on the MNGOP website an RNC tag and say, this is what's going on. So having done it, can do it again. Thank you very much.
Now the boy. It's Georgia, where'd you go? Right there. It's about communication and doing the work. I mean, first off, the job, I think everybody agrees, traditionally it has been one of 3 people that goes to the national party meetings to represent Minnesota, and you need to be able, making my point, you need to be able to articulate why it is Minnesota is not only deserving but must have the resources that are necessary to be successful. But it goes beyond that, because it's not just doing the work, then you got to come back and communicate. And frankly, that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. You do it not only through all the new social media that we have access to, but you do it face to face. You do travel the state. You know, you show up not only on radio stations, because those sometimes are easy, right, Sue Jeffers? Sometimes the radio station's easy. You show up on whatever other TV media you're given to deliver the messages to where we are. But more importantly, that's not where the real work is done. It's done at the local level. You visit the BPOUs. You visit the people where they are, and you communicate directly with them. It's great to talk about social media, and you should use it as much as possible, but I believe there's nothing like face-to-face communication, and you got to be willing to do the work. Girl.
It's Mary. This is now the Catholic way, you know.
Excuse me, Mary, you need to be louder. And could we please have a little more quiet from the back bar area where everyone will join you after the debate?
Tell that uptake guy to quiet down.
Right.
Don't make me laugh. You know, the RNC is not a secret club, and I think that's what we've been led to believe. It's about opening up that communication, and I found through this that doing videos and putting them out there are very easy to accomplish, and in 2 or 3 minutes you can get a pretty good story out. And I would plan to do some of that along with out and about. But the out and about isn't timely. You can't get all over the state in a short period of time. So you need some of that electronic communication, unless... Tom, have you got one of those beam me up things? Figured. It's you know, I was going to tell you before, when you get 50, you start forgetting stuff.
I only forget the bad things, Mary.
I would hope that, or at least my plan would be, if I'm elected, and regardless of who's elected as committee woman, that we'd be able to work together and at the very least put out a regular newsletter, certainly after every RNC meeting, and we could do it separately, but I think if you do it together, it's that much better. One thing I would also love to do as committee man is to, after RNC meetings, at least once a year, if not twice a year, put together a teleconference, essentially a teletown hall for activists, for delegates and alternates to call in, and they get a direct report, because you can't get to all the BPOUs. You can do your best, you can go to executive committee meetings, etc., but there's no way you can hit them all. And that would allow you to update people, and then, you know, take an hour and say, if you got questions, or if you have messages you want us to share with the RNC next time we're out there, please share that now. And I think that's a good way to use the technology and the tools we have to reach out a little better than just sending out something in writing.
I agree with Jeff. I think we're electing a team here. At least I would hope that the committee man and the committee woman would work together as a team, because you'd be more than twice as effective, I think. There's many ways to do it. The other candidates have talked about it, whether it's electronic media, social media. Most of us are on Facebook. There are many of the current committee men and women have websites that can either be done separately or it can be done through the party. It's probably better to have it be a tab on the party's website. I've already talked to the executive committees about coming out to their meetings before the RNC meeting. So if there's important RNC business, you need to get to folks before it and let them know what's on the agenda, to seek their input if there's anything that's controversial, and to take that back so you can make, because you are representing the activists. You're not representing even your opinions so much. You are representative of this party. And I think that even though most of us agree on most things, but I think that's going to be vital. So, and that's the way that you connect the grassroots with the national party. Bill?
You know, it's kind of building on what I said before. It's building relationships. You know, you think about it, this teleconferencing business, that's fine. That's like thinking that money is the cure-all to any problem that you have. Well, you think about it, if you're a Republican up in Crookston or in Bagley in Clearwater County, they kind of have the feeling they don't count. They don't usually see the candidates. I don't think they ever see the state party chair. Maybe they do with Tony. But there's a breakdown in the personal, one-on-one relationship that the people in the leadership positions in the party have with those BPOUs. That is our basic political organizational unit, and we cannot discount it. If we build those relationships, I would almost bet dollars to donuts that their attendance at their meetings would increase. And you know, you think about the party's esprit de corps would increase, because now those people have a feeling that they count.
It's definitely a constituent frame of mind. So being in this role and considering all of you the constituents, I'm a city council member in Shakopee, and as I look at the constituents that I serve, you know, that's really the approach I take. I try to be as many places as I can be, Chamber of Commerce meetings, and meetings of, you know, economic development, you know, ribbon cuttings, things like that. And it's really looking at the party and what's the landscape. You know, we have different groups like the North Star Tea Party Patriots. We have the Republican Liberty Caucus. We have obviously all the BPOUs and CDs. So it's how do you get out there and how do you serve your constituents appropriately, have an open line of communication, and use all the tools that we've all talked about here.
Kelly, you have a question, and just a heads up to the candidates. I'm getting a lot of questions on Twitter. I'm also getting a lot of crap, too. You're all very funny, thanks. But I'm getting some good questions on Twitter, and I have one pending on Gmail. And so after Kelly's question, I'd like to get through a bunch of them and limit the candidates just to a quick 1-minute response.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kelly.
I'm Kelly Fenton. I am a delegate for Senate District 56, and this question goes out to everybody. In your opening statements, you all talked about, many or most of you talked about the importance of redefining the role to raise money, and I want to ask, if elected, you're coming into a state organization with probably about a 200,000 plus deficit, and an RNC, a national organization, with 22 million. You also mentioned needing to get back out of the RNC what we've given to it. So what ideas do you have to turn that around to really help fundraise and get more from the RNC?
Where do you want to start? Go backwards?
It's a leadership opportunity.
All right, Kelly, thanks for your question. Thanks for being here tonight. You know, I think really the view of looking at donors really has to be that of looking at donors as investors. And we are looking at deficits at the state party and at the RNC. And basically, we need to put together our best business case in terms of Minnesota and why investors would want to spend their money here, and show them what the capabilities are. And basically, you know, to do that, you've got to pull together the data. So let's look at the last election. Let's look at the election prior. What have we done to win elections? What are the things that we have misstepped on that we would make corrections and do things differently? And basically put the business case together to put forth to those investors in Minnesota and at a national level to say, this is why you should spend your money here. This is why it's a good investment, and this is how we've learned from what we've done well, what we haven't done well, and how we're going to apply it going forward.
Yeah.
On this whole business of encouraging the investors, our contributors, I think that what we've got to do is basically stop feeding them a lot of hot air. And, you know, I've been to Elephant Club meetings and just a couple of times, or I go to these other meetings and I hear hot air. You know, do they really believe anymore we are really for cutting taxes? You know, it isn't just in my political activity that I've tried to...
Excuse me, Phil.
1 minute?
Is mic on? Ladies and gentlemen, could you keep the conversation to a dull roar? If I can hear you behind Phil, it's too loud. Thank you.
I have to apologize to everybody. You know, usually I'm soft-spoken, but when I get into this business with our party, I don't know what happens. There's some little room that throws a lot of energy out on me, so I apologize if I'm shouting. But anyway, I think that if we can go to our contributors, and especially our major donors, and present them a plan, not just giving them what we'd like to do, but lay out a strategy that they can see that has worked, it does work, I think they will be more willing to contribute dollars to that effort.
I'm going to echo what Phil said. Major donors are looking for a plan. I do want to point out we are in debt at the state level, but we're always in debt after election cycles at the state level. The RNC was pathetic last year. Their fundraising numbers were horrible, and we all know that they spent a lot of money on things that they shouldn't, and I think they've turned them around dramatically. I haven't heard the recent numbers, but I know that I think in the first week or so they got rid of $5 million, does anyone know, of the deficit? So they could be well on their way to at least being solvent. But we have to, the major donors are generally very successful business folks, and they expect a plan, they expect results, they expect you to be able to show where you're going to use the money and how you can win, and that's what we have to lay out in our efforts to raise money, both here in Minnesota and nationally.
And I would just say that it's actually somewhat two different questions. I think there's a different strategy with respect to the RNC than there is with raising money with individuals within Minnesota. When it comes to the RNC, it's really about two things. It's about forming real relationships. It's not about being the larger than life or the biggest personality in the room, because the RNC is full of people who think they're larger than life. And so for us to say that that's a strategy, it's not going to work. You need to go in and you need to form real relationships with the truly handful of decision makers who many of us know, and then you need to gain their trust, and then you need to sell them. And you sell them, but they're going to look at polls. They're going to look at whether they think the campaigns are strong or not. And you may have to pick and choose and say these campaigns are the strongest. These are the campaigns that we're going to be able to convince them their investment will pay off. They don't care about ideology. They don't care about incumbency. They want to know if their money will make a difference and help us win a race at the RNC. So it's about forming that relationship, gaining that trust, and then convincing them. And at the state level, it's many of us have been very involved in raising very big dollars. I ran statewide, and I also ran the House Republican campaign effort. And those are, you know, it's really the same. It's relationship based and plan based, as Pat and others have mentioned.
I think as a business person, I can tell you there isn't a banker in town that will give you money if they don't understand how you've used your money and how you're going to use it and where you expect to end up. One of the problems that we've had in the party, both at the national level and at the state level, is not understanding how those dollars have been used. And it doesn't have to be $5 went here, $10 went there. It's really 25% went to support candidates, 10% went to support popcorn at the office, whatever. Some of those kind of details. People that I've talked to have said they did not give money to the party because they didn't understand how it was being used, and they gave the money directly to the candidates. That's got to stop.
Kelly, I think it really comes down to the message. It's what you're selling and then honoring it and honoring the commitment. I disagree with my colleague about a couple of things. One, going back to the last question, you can and you should get to every BPOU in the state if you are going to be involved in a party position for the state party, because there is this bit about creating relationships at the grassroots level so that they know they have a direct connection to the national level. And then when you go to the national party meetings, it is about principles. You can't say ideology doesn't matter, call it by a different name. Principles are what matter. And what I've heard from more people than not is that they didn't give to the Republican Party because the Republicans they were electing were not honoring their principles. And here's what we've got now. Here's what we've got now. We've got some great Republicans who are attempting to honor those principles, and we need to help them. One of the ways you do that through this job is you take that message, and by the way, this is going to be a very good year for Republicans if they continue to honor the commitments that they've made, that we will raise the $21 million and more at a national level, and we'll be able to perform very well at a state level as well.
I think we have to look at the RNC as a business, like many people have indicated. And they will make investments depending on the return on investment. And many of us are quite aware of how that works. That means a business case and a plan. One of the things that Minnesota has to address, and this is very difficult to say, we have one of the worst pieces of election law in the country. And if you are a business and you need to invest in a state, are you going to invest in a state that goes through recounts and has a Secretary of State who can affect recounts like Ritchie and Acorn? So it becomes an ROI issue as a component of it. What we need to do is make sure, and credit to the state party for paying down a significant portion of their debt already. Thank you, and credit to Reince Priebus for paying down a chunk of the national debt. He is a businessman. We did not have a businessman at the top of the RNC last cycle. We do now. It will change. We will all contribute, and we will work. But it has to be widely spent, wisely, W-I-S-E-L-Y, wisely spent money. We can do that.
Yeah, just a minute, Phil. I'll call on you. I wanted to get one question in from the internets. And if we can start with Pamela, go down the row of women, and then with Phil and go down the row. It's for all questions. I'm sorry, it's for all candidates. It comes from Nancy LaRoche, and she is a delegate from Senate District 45 in Crystal. Her question is as follows. For all candidates, the past committee man and woman seemed AWOL last cycle, and the lack of national financial support was the result. What assurances can you give us that you are dedicated to this position's responsibilities for 2012 election resources and not merely for political opportunism?
So when I reflect on the work that I've done politically so far, one of the biggest things that I've worked on has been Voices of Conservative Women, which was mentioned earlier. It is now a 501c4 nonprofit as well as a political fund. And essentially, as I look at that work and I look at the way that myself and my colleagues that started Voices attacked that, I look at this job in the same way. And essentially what we identified was we identified a void, which Nancy is identifying here, where there was a void in communication, there was a void in potentially the fundraising piece and what that looked like and how delegates understood what was going on or frankly didn't understand. And with Voices, the work that we've done is we researched, we found this void and found that there was a need to raise money for and support female candidates in Minnesota. And what we did is we attacked that with vigor. And we started in the fall of 2009, and in the 2010 election, we raised nearly $90,000 and endorsed 25 candidates across the state, electing 87.5% of those in targeted races where we did independent expenditures that were very, very focused. And essentially, Nancy and those here, you know, that's the way that I work. I find things that need to be attacked, that need help, that need to be raised to a different level, and I go after it in that way. Thank you.
Thank you. I I think most of the people here know me and have known me a long time, and I never do anything halfway. Well, no, I absolutely give it my all. I did that. I do that with every single campaign. I did it last year. I even worked about 6. I left my job in order to campaign, and I will do this for this position. I will work my tail off. I would not be running unless I wanted to give this my all. I've got all of us have other things we can do. I am done running for office. I've told those folks there are other people that can step up in the future, but I have an incredible amount of knowledge and resources and experience that I can give to future candidates. This is not about my political career. My political career is done. But my career as an activist, as a fundraiser, as a helper, as someone who can help get involved in campaigns, that is still going, and I want it to expand dramatically. So I am totally dedicated to doing this job. I will work as hard as I've done throughout my campaigns and throughout my time in this party. Thank you.
It's a very interesting question, because I think it's been posed to me of, do you have time? And I started the MEPS program when the MEPS program has matured now to the point where somebody else is taking it over from me. I started the position I have for the business side of my life, and I am at a point where that's stable and I have the extra time. I have such a commitment to the fact that we need to make the Republican Party the party of women that I, too, am available to work on that and help bring that message out to the women that are conservative, that are voting on the other side, and the Somalian population, etc.
The question is, how do you get out to the various areas? I have been a volunteer for every opportunity or every position I've worked in the party. I've never taken a paycheck. Starting in 2006, because of the critically important elections that we have had in this state and will continue to have, I have traveled across the state to CD conventions for 5 years. That is important, because what you do as a volunteer is you're talking to other volunteers and you're saying it is important that we all step up wherever we can. So the communication can be done, but the connections are there. And I have talked with people in the CDs 7 and 8 who often feel left out, and there is a connection there. But having done it already as a volunteer, I will continue to do that kind of travel as this volunteer position should be done.
I'm over 50. Could you repeat the question again?
No.
Is it me?
I can't.
I guess I'll repeat the question for you, Phil, but the way I understand it is that there's a concern that maybe we would use this position to somehow benefit us, whether it's running for something else or something else. And I guess the only way I can answer that question for Nancy is to say, look at my record. Look at the 6 years. I went into the House of Representatives saying I'm going to serve for 6 years, and there are a few big things that I want to do, and then I'm going to move on. And that's exactly what I did. And it wasn't easy, but that was my purpose in doing that. Then when I was elected to the Hennepin County Board, I said the same thing. I got a few things that I want to do, and I'm not going to stick around for a long time. This is not my career. This doesn't define me being in politics. And we're slowly working on it. It's a bit harder on the Hennepin County Board because there are a lot of 6-1 votes, but we're making tiny steps in the right direction. Thank you. And I would handle this position in exactly the same way. I have a few really important things that I would like to do, and then I will do them.
Actually, Phil, what I understood Nancy to ask is, why are you doing it? What do you have to offer? And what does it have to do with yourself? Well, from where I'm standing, I think I have a lot to offer to this position. and I think that we should take advantage of it. Again, we don't have time in the position as it exists right now to spend the next several months creating relationships and trying to build new relationships. I think if you've got those relationships already, you should take advantage of them right away. And I do have those relationships, and I think I can bring that immediately to the position of Republican National Committee man, and you should be ready to serve wherever you can best serve our cause, and that's what we should all be doing.
Thank you. As you may recall, each candidate has the opportunity to ask one question of the candidate of his or her choice, and Phil has indicated he'd like to ask his now.
I want to raise some money for the party right now. Tom Bach, Senator from Cook, told Bill Hawes this week that our gubernatorial candidate was a DFL dream come true. The party and the campaign's data showed that the margin of victory would be exceedingly thin, razor thin. The candidate and the party, or the party I heard at CD conventions, complained that we got a very small margin of vote out of the metro area. But our candidate, I have been told, did not meet with the Somali community as they wanted. I was told on Saturday at CD4 our candidate did not show up at a meeting of the Hmong community. But at the end of the race, with razor-thin margins, the candidate winds up with more cash net in the account, $46,000, than the state party. So this is my question. Will you contribute to the state party your balance of $46,079.01 to the party so that they can use those funds to get our people elected next year?
Thank you, Phil. First off, and I don't know how much time you get for this, this policy position, this is a wonderful format, apparently. Phil, I want to correct a couple of things for you. First, I did meet with the Somali community, and they're wonderful. And we need to do a lot more outreach and make sure that they understand our message is their message, and that's why they're here. Also, I had some great experience with the Hispanic community and the Hmong community as well. So, not sure why you're throwing those types of barbs tonight, other than it makes for good entertainment. But we did do that work, and you know, it would be nice if you saw something, if you would have helped us with it, because we were working real hard, and I think a lot of people in this room are doing the same thing. When it comes to raising money as well, Phil, what we did, and this goes back to the question that was asked earlier about by Kelly when she was talking about how do you raise this money? What is it that does it? Well, it is the message. It's having candidates that actually talk the talk but also walk the walk. Some of the money that we brought in came in after. Why? I've been told that the list that we developed not only included new donors, and Kathy Roberts, I see you back there, you know this, it not only included a wealth of new donors, but it was the highest performing list in recent memory for the Republican Party. Why? Because the people were supporting the message that we were delivering, the message that we all want. It's what we built this grassroots organization with. And to suggest that I would not do something for the party with the money that we have in our account, and by the way, that's still paying stuff, so don't be so sure that it's 46. I don't think it is. But that part, Phil, you're leaving out the $3 million plus that we've raised on behalf of all candidates in this state in the past election cycle. And while I appreciate that we can have a difference of opinion at times, which is what makes the world go round, let's be clear that we are on the same team, and yes, I'll work just as hard as you and everybody else in this room to make sure our candidates are successful.
So will you give the money to the state party?
Can I ask a question?
Sure, I live for this.
I'm going to ask it to myself. because I don't want to start attacking anybody. I'm going to use 1 minute. I'm going to defend Tom. So I was also a candidate. I lost by 1%. Tom lost by 0.5%. And I can tell you that if we had less than 1/2. All right. I was 1. Okay. But I can tell you, you can always second guess and you can look back and say if you would have done something different or what, you know, you never know what's going to happen in elections. But if we would have had support from the national party, if we would have had even a tiny bit more money, I believe that we would have won. I absolutely believe that because it was so close. And if we would have won, we would have made Wisconsin look tame, I can tell you. And instead, we have Governor Dayton and we have Auditor Otto, who I understand is constantly complaining up at the legislature. So money matters in campaigns. It really does, and we didn't get it. We didn't get the support. It was a tough year for the candidates. It was a tough year for the party, and it was a tough year for the RNC. And we have to make sure that that does not happen again. That is our job, and I know better than anyone what it means. And so I pledge that I will make sure that future candidates don't have to go through that financially. So thank you.
Larry, did you have a question?
Jennifer does.
Oh.
No, I can see that.
Oh, okay.
But Larry, where did Larry go? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jen.
Okay.
And again, we're limiting answers to 1 minute to get in as many questions as we can. Thank you, Lisa.
Hi, I'm Jennifer DeJornett from Senate District 32. I'm an alternate there. And I have a question. I know fundraising is a big part of the job. We've all said that. And fundraising for yourself is a hard task. Fundraising for candidates, who aren't you, is even harder. So in the last election cycle, or the nearest election cycle where you were not a candidate raising money for yourself, how much money, ballpark, have you raised on behalf of candidates other than yourself, or served on a finance committee? And because experience does matter, and I want to know, have you raised money basically for others than yourself, and on a finance committee or in general? Thank you.
I'll start that one out. I raised significant amount of money for the gubernatorial candidate, for one of the gubernatorial candidates. For me, it's much easier to raise money for other people than it is to raise it for myself, because sort of that talking about how good I am is just never easy for me. So it was not hard, and I think probably altogether in the last election cycle raised about $50,000.
I don't keep track, but last summer, 2010, I tried something new. We had a fundraiser for the constitutional officers, not the governor, because that's where most of the money goes. And for the first time, is my understanding in the history of the party, we had a fundraiser for Auditor Pat Anderson, Secretary of State candidate Dan Stevenson, and Attorney General Chris Barton. And it was enormously successful in the sense that we raised thousands of dollars. I don't know the final amount because a lot went online. But that different way of thinking and approaching a project is something that we need to bring into play. So I would say, yes, it's the money. Yes, we did money in CD2, also thanks to an executive director for a couple years. But we just have to think differently. And we were actually pretty comfortable with that program if we could keep it going. So.
I have to say, both the two ladies to my left helped raise money for my campaign, so I thank them very much. Mary raised quite a bit of money, I think. I can't remember exactly. It was several $1,000s, I think, at the event that she had. And they've both been, I know Mary, I've known Mary for a long, long time, and she's always raised money for candidates on a regular basis, and that's part of the job as National Committee Woman and Committee Man. The last election that I raised money for myself would be 2008, and I raised a significant amount of money for several different legislative candidates. I got heavily involved. We were trying to win back seats that we had lost in 2006. Some of them were successful this year, actually. 2008 wasn't much better than 2006, but they are now sitting in the legislature. I've also raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for think tanks, and I've raised significant amounts of money for the party in the past, all the way back 20 years ago when we did neighbor-to-neighbor fundraising, for those of you that have been around that long. So I can tell you, it is always easier to raise money for other people other than yourself, because you can brag and brag and brag, and you can. It's a lot easier. It's hard to overly say how great you are to donors, because you want to be a little humble, especially if you're Midwestern. So.
I mentioned my fundraising experience prior, and that's with the Voices of Conservative Women group in 2010. And the amount that was raised by the group for that election cycle was just under $90,000.
Jennifer, I don't know the number, but I'm certain there hasn't been a year since 2000, whether I'm running or not, where I haven't had requests. Jeff, can you send a letter out, a fundraising letter out for us to your list? Usually it's 3, 4, 5 different requests, and with a few exceptions, I've always granted that. I never keep track. I never put my initials on the envelope so I can say I want to know exactly what I raised. But I do that on a regular basis. Did it again this past year when I wasn't running, and have done it in past years when I have been. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to be able to do.
Jennifer, prior to being in leadership in the House, I only raised money for myself, and I raised the maximum that I could in 2004 without ever having a history of doing it at any level. Once I was in leadership, when we were in the minority, after Jeff left in 2006, the Republicans went into the minority for 4 years, and I was the deputy leader of the caucus in 2007, 2008. I raised money for all candidates. Wherever asked, whenever asked, I would go and help. This past year, you know what we did. We raised almost $3 million again, not having a history of doing it. And now we built a great list that, by the way, we are sharing as we speak with the Senate Republicans, with the House Republicans, with Governor Pawlenty and his efforts. I mean, we will continue to do that.
I have a little fundraising experience. Back when I was first vice chair, not just of the BPOU, but also the 8th District, I like competition. And there was a lady, Wilma Grams, out of Hutchison. She was always the top volunteer solicitor in the state. Well, I had somebody, I mean, you know, I like competition. And I had somebody monitoring how much she was raising. And I raised a lot more money than she did. And Bob Weinholzer, that was state party chair then, gave me a plaque for the amount of money that I raised. Top volunteer fundraiser in the state in that particular year. I can't tell you what the amount was because an over 50 deal.
We'll take a question from Larry. Again, the responses are limited to 1 minute. And then after Larry, I have a lot of questions on Twitter. I'm not able to keep up. I'm having an out-of-body experience following the debate on Twitter as I moderate it here. I'm getting mixed reviews. Larry?
Hi, Larry Grewatch from 64A. This is my area, so spend your money at the bar. You know? Speaking of spending money, the RNC was spending money under Mr. Steele on things other than defeating the Democrats. As a member of the committee, how could you put the focus on spending money, whether it's Minnesota or elsewhere, on defeating the Democrats?
I think he's hit the nail on the head that we had a politician running the RNC instead of a businessman. That is not a slam. I have met Michael Steele. He's one of the most gentle, heartwarming, open people that you ever meet, and he's really tall. But that comes back to the RNC as a business, and we now have a businessman in charge. The deal comes down to prioritizing what needs to be done, where the wins can occur, and then spending the money wisely. There is a subcommittee that works on the RNC, and I talked to Evie to find out exactly how that money is distributed and who does it, and it's a little bit loose. But the other side of it is we have to prioritize at a national level, and we have to have business people do it, and we have that team in place, so hopefully we will not have that kind of spending in the future.
My understanding, too, is that it was loose, and I think if elected, with my business background, I would ask to be on the Finance Committee. I think, again, it's that whole transparency thing of putting out there where the money's going, how it's being spent, and how much is being used to cover overhead. So I think that bus that came around was probably one of the most expensive things we ever did that really wasn't helping to beat Democrats.
Okay.
Oh, you got your own.
I also, I want to point out, I also have a long business background. I think many of you are aware I had a company. I sold it in '02 when I was elected state auditor, but I had built it from scratch. I had about 75 employees, and so that's my original background back when I was a council member and mayor. I don't think it is a matter of whether you are a politician or a business person running the RNC, because we've traditionally had politicians running the RNC. They've been former governors, they've been political people. This is a personality issue, and he was made some very, very poor judgments, not just on levels of spending, but also how the dollars were spent. And I think we're all aware of that, what was in the press and so on. I don't think that either whether we're on the RNC or the current RNC members will ever put up with that again. It's done, and we're not going to have that happen.
Yeah, I would echo what my fellow candidates have said so far, and I think the other thing to kind of add to the mix is, how do you look at an operational budget? And from a nonprofit perspective, which the RNC is a nonprofit, it's really looking at that budget mix and determining the right levels percentage-wise where you're holding that overhead and the different buckets of the budget, and essentially making the right decisions in terms of spending really as much money as you possibly can on candidates and on attracting voters to our party.
You know, I'm getting the idea here that the thought is the only source of money or major source of money is from the RNC. It's important. But if we do the groundwork to build that base prior to our endorsements, it's not just the RNC that's doing their polling and seeing where their dollars are going to go. When Rod Grams ran against Jerry Sikorsky, he was just campaigning along until the end of August. Then the polling came out. These people in Washington, David Hoyam told me, are basically cold-blooded. And they do their polling. David told me that in September and October, from these other sources, they had so much money coming in, they couldn't spend it fast enough. So what we've got to do is build that base, do the groundwork before, so that not only the RNC, but also these other entities are willing to put their dollars in our party's coffers.
I really agree with what Pat said about it being, it's a personality issue, and I actually graduated from law school with Michael Steele. He was a night student. He was considerably older than me, probably closer to Tom's age. But, and I
Johnson won, Emmer nothing.
I could have told anyone who asked me that Michael Steele's the greatest guy in the world. Do not let him handle the budget, because it's not his personality. And so I really believe, and it seems to me, I've met Reince Priebus, I don't know him well, but it seems to me that we have chosen someone who understands the difference, isn't going to want to be on the talk shows all the time, but rather is going to want to manage the budget and raise money. And it is our job as committee man and committee woman to make sure we monitor that closely. And if it looks like we may be going down back down that personality road again, we need to stop it.
Boy, nice personality. You got to get so mean-spirited and chippy all of a sudden. Here I'm being so nice, and you're just going after me like a vicious dog. I mean, just because my hair is white. All right. Larry, where'd you go? Larry, it's about accountability. And one of the things that you should be interested in doing is, if you're going to be in the position of a member of the RNC's National Committee, it should be about paying attention and understanding what money is coming in and where is it going. I had the opportunity to do that within my campaign. I must say that without having a position within the party, didn't have an opportunity necessarily to do it within the state party as well. Look forward to that opportunity if I have this position, but also at a national level. I think it's really too bad. Everybody can say wonderful things about Michael Steele as a human being, but why did we wait so long? And such a great year, why did we wait so long to recognize that it wasn't working? I mean, we're spending almost 80 cents of the dollar on administration. That doesn't make any sense.
Transparency.
Thank you all. This is from Susan Klossmore via the Twitter. She has what she calls a quick question, and at 60 seconds response, they have to be quick answers. I asked her for clarification. I'm not quite sure if she got it. Her original question is, which national, why don't we start with Tom and then just go down the aisle, or the tables rather, which national campaign strategy, GOP or DFL, do you admire the most and why?
Yeah.
You can answer it any way you like. She opened it to either a GOP campaign strategy or DFL. Can you name one that you admire, and what reasons would you give for that admiration?
Tom, do you want me to let you off the hook? I can answer.
No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's my enabling.
Thanks for sharing.
Hey, I admire ours. I absolutely admire ours. Contrary to my colleague who wanted to throw the barbs earlier, we came from 10 to 15 points back in roughly 60 days. And how did we do that? We did that at the grassroots level. Yeah, you're right. We've got some work in the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul, because if you pull those two cities out of the last campaign, we won the governor's race across this state by 6 percentage points. So what's the issue? One of the reasons that I think this position is so important is because if you have that $10 million coming back into the state of Minnesota back in the 2008 presidential election, folks, that translates to building the infrastructure that we so dearly need within the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul. That gives us additional resources to do that necessary work, to build that infrastructure that will help us move out votes so that we're not getting 18 to 20%, so that we're getting 30%, 35%, and that we don't have to worry about fraud in our elections because the margin of victory is so great we don't have to worry about it.
Michelle Bachmann, because not only does she raise a ton of money quickly, she does it largely through small donations. And I think that is not only a great way to raise money, but it's a tremendous way to get lots of people invested in your particular campaign. So they are putting up lawn signs, they're knocking on doors, they're stuffing envelopes, and they're giving $20 at a time.
I have a problem with the question because basically I didn't think that there was some monolithic campaign strategy that one party had and the other party had something contrary to it. Because if I look at candidates, how many candidates do we run? That's probably how many campaign strategies we have. But as far as the party goes, and that's what I'm trying to get at, the strategy has been we get our candidates, we get our message out between endorsing convention and the general election. The strategy has to change because between the previous November and a year and a half later when we endorse another candidate, we are zero in these BPO, in these districts. That's what has to change, and that is the strategic change that I've been advocating in this campaign for national committeeman.
Well, I think admire is a strong word because I don't think I would use admire, but I certainly am a spy out there, and I'm going to give myself up right now on the internet. And you at Women Winning and Emily's List and the Obama campaign, you can match up all the watch lists that you can get your hands on with my email address because I get all your stuff. And I watch it and I look at the messaging and I look at the techniques that you're using to raise money. And you know what? We've got to be open to learning from the other side because we've got to play the same game they do. I read the book about the marketing of the Obama campaign, how they were on the ground, how they used social media. We've got to be students of it. So I encourage all of you conservatives to go out there and sign up for these mailing lists. I got an email from Joe Biden last week. It gives me a little chuckle when it shows up in my email box. But you know, they're asking for $5 and $10, and they're doing this at a huge rate, and that's how they're bringing money in, and we've got to figure out how to do it on our side too, and talk to people that have the same values as us and that support our platform and will give us money in the same way.
I think in 2008, the Democrats clearly had us beat. I think the Obama presidential campaign was the first time we had ever seen the incredible social media use, and it was effective, and they won. And I think this year that we had the upper hand, not in Minnesota, but also nationally. I think we were the ones that had, I think, wider lists, that had better use of social media. I think we had the nationwide message. The Democrats' message was, you know, to hide from their votes in the past and to say, oh, it's not so bad. But we went on the offensive. And I think the key to winning races is to be able to go on the offensive. And that's important. And so I think I would stick with our strategy in this last time, and I think we're going to have the absolute upper hand in 2012.
I think it's a great question. The one I admire the most is the Democrats' strategy on farm teams, how they start grooming their people to put them on city councils, school boards, and then take them from one step to the other and eventually get them so they're a very proficient candidate and know how to do things. I think the other part is the money thing, and we talked about in the 4th District, if everybody in the 4th District would have given $1, we would have had enough money to run a reasonable campaign for Teresa Collette. So I think there's two strategies that I really admire.
I think we've got two levels here. We have a general national level on a campaign strategy, and then we have a state level, well, sort of. If you want to pick a campaign, I think we need to pick the Chip Cravat campaign, because they ran that campaign on an uphill battle with, I think it was less than $400,000, and they did it because they had a fundraiser in Joey that just went pedal to the metal. So there are attitudes that can make a difference, and we need to figure out how to do that at multiple levels. But the other thing across the state, we have got to start unifying our sources. We need to start using our blogosphere a lot more, and we need to take what worked in 2010 and have the brainstorming session, what worked, what did not work, and improve it. And we need to do that now.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the floor? I have too many questions on Twitter, even with a 1-minute time limit, so I think at this time I'll drop my BlackBerry. Go ahead.
My name is Gary Borgendale. I'm a delegate from Senate District 51. Let's talk a little bit about how we deal with data. That's very crucial in how we manage and win elections. So what would be your input of how we improve our data collection, our data distribution, maintaining the list, and be able to share that information just with all the candidates?
I think it goes back to feet on the ground. I'm not going to let John direct who's going to talk first. I get to. Anyway, feet on the ground. And that was what the Democrats did. They went door to door. They identified voters. We have probably the worst lists in town. And I can tell you that the state central list today was frustrating me to no end, and it's coming right off our database. 405 delegates were noted on the list that I was given. There is actually 450.
There's two components to data. One is getting the data, and then the other one is getting it in the system. Last year, we had a Sarah Palin, Michelle Bachmann rally, and we went after getting people to sign up for election judges. We collected 1,200 names that day, but the party could not get the data entered. I went to my personal list, parceled it out to 5 friends, and we got the 1,200 done in 3 days and met the deadline to submit these names for election judges. That's doing business differently. After the state fair, same problem. Can't get the data into the system so the candidates can use it. So I begged them, send it out to people at home. We trained them, got a security agreement, and then got the data done. That data is available. The point is we need to think differently on how we are going to do it. Yes, we need to collect it, but the DFL pays for boots on the ground and we don't. We need to figure out a better way.
Yeah, and it's really a matter of how we want to spend our money, too, because there's plenty of technology that we could invest in to make our data better, voter ID, as well as the delegate list that we're talking about. So, you know, it's really a determination of how we want to spend our money and where we want to invest. And the right thing to do at this point in time might be what Janet talked about. You get volunteers, or, frankly, you call up pro staff and pay somebody an hourly wage and get the data in so that you can at least use it, because if we collect it, we certainly want to have access to it and use it. But I think it's a good challenge, you know, in terms of where do we go forward. And I think looking at technology solutions, you know, handheld devices, things like that is something that a road that we need to go down.
Our data is terrible. I think we're all aware of that. And our voter ID data is terrible. And we also do not keep things from one election cycle to another. I'll give you a prime example. In the 02 election, we had a huge statewide 4x8 lawn sign program. Do you remember when we were running? It was Coleman and Plenty and myself and Kiffmeyer. And we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of 4x8 locations all over the state on the major freeways. And we did that through volunteers and staff who called. They went out and got the plat books, and they called every property owner of every field all along these major roads. Well, the 06 election comes on, and they don't have any of the data. They never kept any of it. And we were just floored. Jeff, you remember this, because you ran in 06. That is such a shame. And we still don't have stuff. And I don't know what's happening now. I don't know if they're keeping the stuff that we have in this last campaign cycle. So we are very, very bad at this. We lose stuff from cycle to cycle, and we don't have good lists to begin with.
I don't know how you add to that. I pretty much agree with what you all said. I want to add one thing, and that is that as committee man, I think you're always looking for help from the RNC, but you also play another role, and that's to make sure they understand they can't come in and take over, because that doesn't really help much.
I'm going to add, since I agree with most of what's been said, I'm going to add another side of it. From the candidate side, I think every member of the executive team, the Republican National Committee man would just be one of those members, has to be listening and responsive to what's happening with candidates and with precinct chairs, BPOU chairs on the ground. Because when I first got into the House, one of the biggest complaints was this voter vault isn't correct. You can't access it, you can't use it, and it's incorrect, the information that you get out of it. I mean, when, what was it, Rowley was on John Klein's wall as a strong Republican, and she was running against him for Congress, there was a problem. So there's another piece of it as well. You need to be listening to people who are trying to use the information, and you need to address issues as they arise so that we can have lists that work.
I pretty much agree with a lot of what's said, the data collection, the problems of data entry. My experience in the 8th District was I raised $10,000 for a voter ID program. We bought a computer, we bought a printer, whatever else. We had an office in Virginia, and we got all of this collected data into the computer. And then what happened is they traded off the computer for something else. But no one thought to take the data, the lists and names out of that computer before they got rid of it.
I'd like to thank everyone for their participation here at O'Gara's, the candidates, every single one of them, people watching across the state, people who participated by Twitter and by email. I think now we'll conclude with 1 minute closing remarks, and if we start with Tom Emmer and then go to my left. Thank you all very much, and thank you, the uptake.
Thanks, John. Thank you all. Thanks to all the great people that participated in this, as well as everybody who's here tonight. Very quickly, I think that we should realize return on the investment that we all made over the last year and a half plus. It is about resources, no question. It's about national resources. It's about state resources that are necessary to help our candidates succeed in 2012 and beyond. But it's also about the grassroots that we all built. It's about continuing to build off of what we've created, enhance it, and make sure that it is ready to go when the election comes around, and not try to flip that switch 60 days in advance. And lastly, folks, it is about communication. It's about communicating with the grassroots level and making sure that they know what's happening at a national level, make sure that we're not working against each other, that we're working together for victory in 2012, 2014, and beyond. If you agree with me that we should realize a return on that investment, if we should leverage these relationships that we've created over the last 2 years, then I would sincerely ask for your support on April 16th. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you again for all being here. Thank you, John, for putting this together. As I mentioned when I started, we have a tremendous opportunity to really redefine this position, to change this position, to turn it into something much bigger than it is. And I am going to continue to try to earn your support for this. No one deserves this position. Nobody should expect to be given this position. No one has a right to this position. We should earn the position. That's kind of the way Republicans do things. And earning the position means sharing your vision. It means sitting on the phone for the past 2.5 months every night, as I have been doing, answering questions, sharing details, and talking to the folks who are going to make that decision. And I will continue to do those same things for the next 2.5 weeks, and I hope that I can earn your support for this position. Thank you.
In the wrap-up, I thought I'd read a prayer that Billy Graham had, but in 1 minute, it times out in 1.5 minutes, so I won't do that today. But I think you know at this point where I stand. We have to have a strategic change in the way our party delivers our message, and going right to the data collection. We have to have those names. We have to do the groundwork. One of my sons, we were talking about this, and he said to me, he says, you know, Dad, the Republicans are really good on aerial bombardment. That's after we've endorsed a candidate. But we don't do very well on the foot soldier work before. And he says that's what our problem is. And my effort would be to fill that hole and get that strategic change in our party, and with the goal. You know, Rudy Boschwitz quoted Ronald Reagan at CD3. The strategy is real simple. We win, they lose.
So in this race for National Committee Woman, really my focus has been and will continue to be, we need to focus on finding those great electable conservative candidates. We've got to raise the money to fuel the ground game and make the right decisions about where that money's going, and basically elect these people to office. Attracting people to the Republican Party, that's the magic formula, is the right candidates plus the money will enable us to attract voters. And as I said before, this is our time. This is where we've got the momentum with the Republican Party. And I actually was going to quote Reagan as well, because we are coming upon this time, but he said that to Republicans, every day is the 4th of July. And I would encourage you to remember that that's the message that we want to get out there. To the Democrats, every day is April 15th.
I wish I had a good Reagan quote. I want to go back and apologize to my fellow college Republicans. We were productive. It was Reagan's re-election year, and the 20 of us that existed at the U had our signs on the Washington Avenue Bridge, and we were being yelled at by all the other folks. But boy, have times changed, and they're going to keep going. I want to do this. I want to give you my knowledge and my passion. I want to work incredibly hard to make this party become the absolute dominant party here in Minnesota nationally. I think that the thing to remember about me is folks know me. I've been all over the state. I've been to every BPOU probably many times, but most importantly, I'm a team player. I've always been a team player. And I think as National Committee Woman, you have to be part of that team. You've got to be someone that people can work with, that people can confide in, and who just has the best interests of the party at heart and the conservative movement. You're a spokesperson, you're an advocate, you're a cheerleader, and you're a fundraiser, and you're a campaign operative. And I've been all those things, and I want to continue to be that for our cause. Thank you. Thanks.
I was going to talk from there, but I decided I needed to get up and move. I think as delegates and alternates, you've been given a responsibility to help pick the person, select the person that should represent Minnesota, both on the executive committee as well as at the RNC. The RNC isn't the end-all. A lot of it is the relationships that have to be built with the people in the state, the trust that has to be created again, both at the state and the local level. And I think the attributes of the individual to be able to get the job done. As I've said at a lot of the CDs, I tend to think I have those attributes and I'm the best candidate, and so I'll argue with the rest of them.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you for those of you who heard it online. We have some good candidates, but my vision is that we have to focus on what the RNC needs to do, and that is financially raise money and, of course, spend it wisely. We have to persuade the RNC to invest in Minnesota, and one of the key things that we can do to make that happen is to get this photo ID passed this year, because this will say we are now in the game. That is absolutely critical. There are other things that we have to do, but we have a minute. I have been working tirelessly as a volunteer for multiple cycles all over the state to improve our odds to win elections. And I think that is critical for every move that we make going forward. I am Janet Byhofer, and I would appreciate your support and your vote on April 16th as your next Minnesota representative to the RNC. Thank you very much for coming tonight. John, thanks for a good job, and everybody be careful going home.
You can applaud for the candidates, please. Thank you all. And one final note, the uptake to my right is interested in any of the candidates having an interview, and see the people with the recorder. Thank you very much. Good evening.